Revealed, the touching moment a billionaire's son chose an unsuspected waitress as his true mom. Rain hammered down on the small town of Willow Creek, where the neon lights of the local diner flickered like dreams fighting against the dark. Inside, Jake Thompson stood out, a young man dressed in designer clothes that screamed privilege, yet his deep-set eyes held a yearning for something far more significant than wealth. He had everything money could buy, but he felt painfully empty. At a worn wooden table, he met Maria, a middle-aged waitress whose soft hands carried stories of struggle and heartache. As she poured him a cup of coffee, her warm smile melted the icy chains of expectation wrapping around Jake's heart. She talked about her 2 kids, the late nights working for pennies, and her husband, a brave soldier lost to war. Each word resonated with him, igniting something he had buried beneath layers of corporate ambition. "You know, Jake, life isn't just about the money," Maria said one afternoon, her eyes glistening with truth. "It's about love, connection, the bonds we forge with each other." Her words struck him like summer lightning, and for a moment, he felt alive. Before he could fully embrace this newfound friendship, his father stormed in like a dark cloud on a sunny day. "Jake! I have just the opportunity for you. A prestigious role at Thompson Industries, a step toward the throne." The pressure crashed down on him like the rain outside. Torn between his father's expectations and his bond with Maria, Jake's heart raced. Could he choose a path of his own? Suddenly, the delicate balance tipped when Maria confided her financial troubles. "I've been holding on by a thread, Jake. Just trying to keep the kids safe," she whispered, her voice faltering. In that moment, her vulnerability revealed a world starkly different from his cushioned life. She fought every day for survival while Jake floated in a sea of wealth. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Days later, a scandal erupted, and suddenly Maria's struggles became public knowledge. Whispers filled the town. Jake felt a fire ignite within him. This shouldn't happen to someone as deserving as Maria. He decided to act. At the annual community fundraising gala, everything felt electric. Industry leaders and local faces crowded the room, mixing glitz with grit. As the lights dimmed, eyes turned to him. Panic clawed at his chest, but he couldn't back down. "Maria is my true family," he declared boldly, his heart pounding. The room buzzed with disbelief and shock. Could he really defy his father and his legacy for her? Butterflies swarmed in the pit of his stomach as he stood firm against the tides of judgment. As silence engulfed the crowd, Jake realized the question hung in the balance: could love bridge the gap between the world of wealth and one of hardship? He caught Maria's eye, filled with fear and hope. Would they emerge unscathed together? The stakes soared, and uncertainty loomed large as the fluctuating boundaries of privilege and connection etched a fiery mark across his heart. Jake's heart raced as he stood in that spotlight, feeling the weight of 100 judgmental gazes on him. The air thickened with tension, and for a fleeting moment, he feared the backlash from the prestigious crowd. Would his father's wrath be the price he paid for this declaration? Maria's expression shifted from fear to a glimmer of understanding, a silent question hanging between them: was he really willing to stake his future on their connection? As murmurs rippled through the crowd, Jake took a deep breath, grounding himself in the truth he had just spoken. "Are you out of your mind?" hissed Roger, the CEO of Thompson Industries, pushing through the throng of well-dressed attendees to face Jake. "You're throwing your life away for a waitress? You're better than this." The words lashed at him, invoking the voice of his father. Jake felt a rush of shame wash over him. But he quickly recalled Maria's unwavering spirit, her selfless sacrifices for her children, it ignited his resolve once more. "Better isn't meaning wealth," he replied, his voice steady and confident. "Better is about who we choose to stand by." With that, he turned back to the crowd, his gaze scanning the faces, a mix of disbelief, admiration, and righteous anger. Would any of them understand? Did they ever stop to consider what truly mattered? In the corner of the room, Maria stood frozen, her smile faltering as the gravity of the moment enveloped her. As if sensing his resolve, her eyes met his, and a flicker of pride lit her face, pushing her forward. She stepped into the light, her hands trembling. "Jake, you don't have to do this for me. I can take care of my own problems," she said, voice wavering, but the fire in her spirit unmistakable. Jake shook his head firmly. "No, Maria. You shouldn't have to face this alone." An unexpected wave of applause erupted from a small group of the diner regulars, who had come to support Maria. Their hearts beat in rhythm with Jake's words, showing that sometimes, love does transcend the barriers society builds. But even amidst this flicker of hope, Jake felt the sting of conflict. His father's disappointed glare, the pressure of family legacy. How would this all unfold? A growing storm of uncertainty filled the back of his mind. As he held Maria's gaze, a deeper question crept in: could he truly redefine family and belonging in a world hell-bent on upholding tradition? Feeling fragile but determined, he said, "If this lands me in the depths of my father's disdain, then so be it. I'll fight for what truly matters." The crowd erupted in cheers, but as Maria stepped closer, something flickered behind her eyes. It was fear mixed with admiration, and it left Jake wondering if he was pulling her into a fight she wasn't ready to face. With each heartbeat, the atmosphere hummed with possibility and dread. They each had a choice to make, one that could alter their lives forever. As Jake's father clenched his jaw from across the room, the reality of their next steps loomed larger than his family's name. What if their bond was tested so fiercely that it would either break them or rebuild the very foundations of their lives? Jake knew one thing for sure: the storm was only beginning. The cheers echoed like thunder, but all Jake could feel was the pounding of his heart against his ribs. He had chosen this path, yet the uncertainty twisted inside him like a coiling snake. Would this moment divide them or unite them more closely than ever before? Maria stepped further into the spotlight, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Jake," she whispered, her voice trembling, "this won't change anything for my kids. I can't let you sacrifice so much for me." But Jake shook his head again, stepping closer, feeling the warmth radiate from her. "I'm not just doing this for you. I'm doing this for us." The gasps around them grew louder. Roger still stood there, his expression sour, battling against the wave of emotion washing over the room. "You're not thinking clearly," he spat, eyebrows drawn together like thunderclouds. "She's not your world, Jake. Get a hold of yourself." "Maybe my world needs to change," Jake shot back, frustration simmering just below the surface. With each word, the stakes rose. The air felt electric, charged with the weight of their choices. He couldn't escape the memories of his father's voice, taunting him in his mind, warning him, "Family comes first. Always." But in that moment, Jake could finally see a different picture. Family shouldn't be about obligation, it should be about truth and love. "Look at me," Maria urged softly, her hand reaching out to clasp his. "I've fought my whole life. I want to protect my children, but I don't want to hurt you in the process." Jake's eyes softened as he grasped her hand tighter, a lifeline in a tumultuous sea. Every heartbeat echoed the reality they faced. Could they find a way to weave their paths together despite the storm on the horizon? The crowd had shifted, murmurs echoing like ripples on water. Some supported, while others frowned, voices full of worry and concern. "This is madness," someone whispered. "He will never be taken seriously." "Let them talk," Jake said with a sudden burst of conviction. "I care about this moment, about us, more than I do about what they think." His words hung in the air, a defiant shield against all the looming judgments. Maria seemed to draw strength from him, her shoulders visibly relaxing. She took a step forward, becoming a pillar beside him. But the unpredictability of their circumstances loomed. The CEO's growing discontent simmered, and Jake's father stood watching, his expression unreadable, an impending storm brewing against a backdrop of riches and expectations. As applause swelled, pushing back the tide of dissent, Jake turned to face the crowd again, feeling a sense of home in his heart. "I stand for love, for real connections," he declared, his tone lifting with clarity. "Not for titles or wealth. That's how I want to live my life going forward." The crowd quieted, the emotions on display reflecting what lay beneath their polished exteriors. Hope, fear, love, and anger all tangled together. At the fringes, he noticed familiar faces, regulars from the diner, support and recognition shimmering in their eyes. He could almost hear their hearts beating in rhythm with his defiance. But just as he thought he had a grip on the moment, a voice cut through the air, the unmistakable authority of his father, slicing through the tension. "Jake, you are making a grave mistake." His words echoed ominously, and the room fell silent. Jake's heart raced once more, but this time, it wasn't fear that fueled his pulse, it was determination. Could he stand strong against everything he had known? The stakes weren't just his future anymore, they were Maria's and the lives of her children. As he locked eyes with his father, Jake realized the battle wasn't just with others, it was within himself. Could he sever the binds of the past and embrace a future that challenged every lesson he had learned? With a deep breath, he stepped forward, ready to face the truth of their uncharted path. The storm was growing more intense, and he felt the winds shift, pushing them toward an uncertain horizon. Would they weather it together, or was it just the beginning of a fight that could tear them apart? Jake felt the weight of his father's gaze like a physical force, pressing on him, demanding obedience. The tension in the room hung thick, like a dense fog rolling in before a storm. He could hear the hushed whispers, doubts and fears swirling around him, each voice adding to the cacophony in his mind. "Don't let them dictate your life, Jake." Maria's voice broke through his thoughts, steady and warm. She squeezed his hand tighter, grounding him. "They don't know us." Steeling himself, he faced the crowd again. Their eyes were a mix of disbelief, concern, and a flicker of admiration. "I know what I'm doing," he declared with more confidence than he felt. "It's not a mistake to love someone openly and to fight for something real." The words spilled from him, raw and unfiltered. He was tired of hiding. Then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed Roger's sneer deepen, the dissatisfaction radiating off him like heat from a wildfire. "You'll regret this," Roger shot back, voice dripping with disdain. "You'll throw everything away for enough." Jake interrupted, his voice rising. "You don't get to decide what I value. I'm done pretending. It's time to face the truth." Around him, reactions flared. A few supporters nodded, while others exchanged uneasy glances. The room was alive with a mix of hope and judgment, a living, breathing entity changing with every heartbeat. In that moment, Jake felt a profound shift. It was as if the air crackled with a new possibility. Could he really take this step? Could he uproot the legacy his father had created? It felt both terrifying and exhilarating, a leap into the unknown. Maria looked at him, eyes shining with belief. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered, her voice barely above the pulse of the crowd. "We can face this together. Whatever it takes." He nodded, feeling her strength weave into his resolve. Taking a deep breath, he turned to his father, whose frown deepened. "This isn't just about business anymore, Dad. It's about love, respect, and being true to who I am. You taught me that family should mean more than just blood." Jake noticed the flicker of surprise in his father's eyes, faint but undeniable. The older man shifted, discomfort pushing against his authority. Maybe he was beginning to see the man his son had become. Then, the sound of a small voice cut through the clamor. A child, no more than 8, broke through the crowd, wide-eyed and innocent. "Are you really going to help my mom?" Jake's heart twisted at the sight. The girl's earnestness added another layer to the already charged atmosphere. It was one thing to stand up for Maria in the face of scorn, it was another to recognize the kids whose lives hung in the balance. "Yes," he replied, kneeling down to her level. "I want to help your mom because she's brave, and because she deserves happiness." The little girl's face lit up, and in that instant, Jake could see a new world, a mosaic of love, kindness, and futures intertwined. He felt Maria's presence beside him, solid and unwavering. As he rose, he scanned the crowd again. Not everyone was convinced, but many wore expressions of intrigue now, as if they were uncovering a story richer than what they knew at first. Then, as if his father's displeasure could no longer be contained, he stepped closer, face taut with anger. "You're making a fool of yourself. Do you really think they'll follow you? This is just childish rebellion." But his words sank into Jake like stones thrown into still water. With determination boiling in his veins, he realized this was just a moment. This was a pivotal battle, not only against his father but against every fear that had held him back. "Maybe being a fool is better than being a puppet," Jake shot back, feeling the fire ignite within him. Whatever this cost, he wouldn't back down. And then, beneath all the noise, he felt Maria's hand find his again. Their fingers intertwined, a promise wrapping around them. With her beside him, stepping forward felt less like a choice and more like a necessity. The applause and cheers mixed with the dissenting whispers faded into a backdrop as Jake stood tall, ready to forge their future together. But deep down, he couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the very foundations his father had built began to crumble. The winds howled outside, echoing the turmoil echoing in his heart. Just then, a flicker of doubt crept in. Could love actually conquer all, or was he merely setting himself up for a devastating fall? As the crowd continued to murmur, a single thought crystallized in his mind: this was just the beginning of their fight. What would that mean for them as the truths began to unravel? The intensity in the room shifted dramatically, and the once rolling cacophony began to dissipate, giving way to an electric silence punctuated only by the thrumming of Jake's heartbeat. He could feel the weight of every gaze, every judgment and every faint flicker of hope directed at him. He straightened his spine, reminded of Maria's unwavering belief in him. Childish rebellion? Jake fired back at his father, his tone sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Rebellion is hiding who I am. This is about authenticity, Dad. It's about standing up and saying enough is enough." Roger scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're not just risking your future, Jake. You're risking your entire family's legacy." Jake's mind raced, but he couldn't let it spiral into despair. Is loyalty to a legacy worth more than love? Worth more than happiness? The question hung in the air, allowing the room to shift again, slowly transforming the chorus of disapproval into a growing murmur of agreement among the crowd. A woman in the back, her voice strong and filled with conviction, spoke up. "He's right. It's our choices that define us, not our family names." Jake glanced at Maria, her eyes bright with a mix of pride and reassurance. They were fighting this battle together, and she was just as much a part of this fight as he was. With every heartbeat, he could feel her strength bolstering him. As the murmurs grew, Jake caught sight of his father's face, the deepening lines of worry etched across his brow. "You don't understand what you're doing," his father shouted back, desperation creeping in. "No, Dad. It's you who doesn't understand," Jake said, stepping forward. "You taught me to live with courage, to honor my truth. Why should this be any different? Why should love be conditional?" The crowd rippled with movement, a wave of shifting emotions, doubts mixing with belief. He saw others beginning to nod, including some of his father's old allies, people who had likely known him his whole life. If anything could shake the foundations his father had built, maybe this was it. When Jake turned back to the little girl, she was still standing there, her wide eyes drinking in the scene unfolding before her. "Do you really believe that, mister?" she asked, the innocence in her voice piercing through the chaos. It cut to the heart of everything he was fighting for. "Yes, I do," he said, kneeling once more. "And I believe your mom believes in bravery too. She taught me that freedom comes from love." At that moment, it felt like time stood still. The applause began quietly, tentatively, as people started to appreciate the courage it took for Jake to lay himself bare. As the clapping grew louder, his father turned on his heel, visibly shaken. Jake read the signs. This wasn't just anger, it was fear. Fear that his son was stepping into a territory that could threaten everything he had fought to construct. "Maybe you should think about what it means to go against your own," his father said, voice trembling, laden with an uncharacteristic vulnerability. But Jake wasn't going to back down. "Maybe you should think about what you could gain by embracing who I really am," he replied, his resolve growing stronger with each word. The applause surged, rippling back to Maria, who now smiled brightly, her faith unwavering. Suddenly the air was electric. Each cheer was a lifeboat tossed into wild waters. Yet, as he glanced back at his father, there was an unsettling realization that swirled in his gut. If the foundations of their world began to collapse, what would happen to the family that had built their lives on those shaky grounds? Jake's thoughts tangled in a web of hope and fear. The stakes were higher than ever. The crowd continued to roar around him, but he couldn't shake the question that loomed larger than life. What was he willing to fight for, himself or the family legacy? Would love turn this tide, or would the entire world break under the weight of their choices? As silence fell once more, the realization washed over him, balancing between the thrill of revolution and the fear of destruction. The moment of truth was at hand. Would he stand firm in his new path, or risk everything to hold on to the old? Jake's heart pounded as the room echoed with applause, each clap matching his quickened breath. He was on fire, his words igniting something profound in everyone watching. But beneath the cheers was a familiar knot of anxiety twisting tighter in his stomach. What if he lost his father forever? What if this desire for authenticity splintered the family he had known? He turned back to the crowd, searching for familiar faces. They were no longer just observers but a community, bound together in this moment of vulnerability. Each smile felt like a silent promise. Yet deep inside, he felt the weight of his father's disappointed gaze, a shadow looming over this flickering light. "Jake!" A voice cut through the noise like a siren, and all heads turned to see Mona Weaver, the woman who had encouraged him from the start. She stepped out from the throng, her face bright with determination. "You have the courage to fight for what you believe in. Don't let anyone take that from you." "Yeah. Keep going, Jake." Someone from the back of the room shouted. A ripple of enthusiasm spread, building momentum in the room once more. Jake's throat felt tight, emotions surging like a tidal wave. "Thank you," he managed to say, gratitude spilling from his lips. "But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us finding the courage to be who we really are." He glanced at Maria, who stood there radiating strength, her unwavering presence a lighthouse in a stormy sea. Her eyes sparkled as she nodded, bringing a sense of calm that helped ground him. He took a breath, reorganizing his thoughts as the urgency of the moment pressed against him. "I loved my upbringing, and I'll always appreciate the way my father provided for us," he continued, striving for balance between affection and authenticity. "But what good is it if we sacrifice our happiness for appearances? We must choose our paths, not just inherit them." Roger shifted, the muscles in his jaw clenched. His expression was a mix of anger and hurt, but there was also something else, an echo of pride masked by fear. The room had turned. He was losing ground, and Jake could feel it. "Everyone here is searching for belonging," Jake pressed on. "And I know I can't be the only one feeling this way. It's not just our names or our families that define us, it's our choices. We need to embrace the love in our lives instead of letting expectations drown us." People began to rise from their seats, the applause morphing into something deeper, a battle cry for acceptance and change. Jake's throat tightened again, overwhelmed by the collective emotions fluttering through the room. But with the support came uncertainty. What did change mean for him? For the family that had raised him? He dared a glance at his father once more. The defiance in Jake's heart flickered, battling all the love that was held prisoner by pride. "Dad, I don't want to lose you over this. I am still your son. I just need you to see me to really see me." The atmosphere crackled with a heavy silence, the tension palpable. Roger stood, weighing his options. Could he step back, let go of the legacy he had fought so hard for to give his son the freedom to choose his own path? Could he find even a glimmer of understanding among the shifting sands of tradition? As Jake waited, the air buzzed with anxiety and expectation, a living thing palpating in the shared heartbeat of the crowd. The moment stretched indefinitely, a lit fuse waiting for a spark. Would his father accept him for who he truly was, or would the walls they built come crashing down, forever changing the landscape of their lives? Just then, a voice rang out, breaking the intense standoff. "Maybe we need to stop living for everyone else." It was the little girl again, her innocent insight cutting through the tension. "Wouldn't that be better?" Jake's heart soared. Hope, strong and vibrant, filled the room. Yet, the future remained uncertain. How far would they all have to go to rewrite the legacy that had defined their families? Who would stand with him? And as the energy shifted again, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Jake could hear his breath, steady but electrified with anticipation. Everyone's eyes were locked on him, and yet, his focus honed in on the still figure of his father. Roger seemed lost, caught between the urgency of the moment and the immovable weight of tradition. As the girl's innocent voice echoed in the room, Jake couldn't help but feel a surge of determination. Maybe it is time, he thought, to redefine what it means to belong. "Listen," he called out, his voice rising to capture their attention again. "We have to be brave not just for ourselves but for our families too. We can guide them to a world where love is louder than judgment." The crowd shifted, and murmurs ran through them like whispers of hope. Jake saw faces soften, barriers slowly starting to crack. He felt the heat of courage thrumming in his veins, driving him forward. "Dad," he urged, taking a step closer, "I know this is hard for you. I see the fear etched in your face. But what if by being who I am, I can help others feel brave enough to do the same? What if this change can strengthen our family instead of tearing it apart?" Roger's eyes flickered, struggling against a tide of anger and confusion. But beneath the surface, Jake glimpsed something. A glimmer of understanding, perhaps? Jake pressed on, sensing he was gaining ground. "You've given so much for this family. But I don't want that to mean I can't be myself. I love you, and I need you to believe that love can live in many forms." With every word, Jake poured himself into the speech. He shared stories, laughs, moments where family love transcended the boundaries of societal expectations. He spoke of his friends who felt lost, of siblings who had chosen paths filled with struggle, and of the times he longed for acceptance. The atmosphere felt electric, and as he gestured toward the small crowd, he saw nods of agreement. The onlookers were no longer passive but actively engaged in this collective metamorphosis. Suddenly, Roger lifted a hand, silencing the growing noise. Everyone turned, their breaths caught in unison. There was an almost sacred pause as the father's gaze fell on Jake, his son, his heart. "Jake." Roger's voice was uneven, tremors betraying the facade of strength he had always held. "I've worked hard to build something that I thought would keep our family safe. But I understand that safety without happiness is just a cage." Jake felt a lump in his throat as hope bloomed in his chest. There was a chance. The connection in that single moment shimmered like hope on a bright morning. But the world isn't the same as it once was, Roger continued, placing his hands on his hips, shoulders slumping in a way that bore the weight of his own struggle. I want to understand. I don't want to lose you. The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Jake's heart raced, swelling with relief and possibility. Then let me show you, Dad, he began, the edges of his voice softening in disbelief. But before he could finish, a loud crash broke through the seriousness of the moment. A chair toppled over as a figure stumbled into the room. One of Jake's friends, panic etched across their face. Jake! You have to come. It's. Jake's stomach sank, his momentary hope clashing with an unfamiliar dread. What now? There was a life-altering conversation unfolding, teetering on the brink of transformation, and now chaos interrupted it. As the crowd turned, eyes wide with concern, Jake couldn't help but wonder, what had just happened, and would this derail everything he had fought for? Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he stared at his friend, feeling the weight of the room shift. The air, once thick with anticipation and connection, now crackled with tension, raw and fearful. He could almost taste the dread. What is going on? He asked, the urgency in his voice spilling over. He stepped toward his friend, whose face was pale as a ghost. The collective breaths of the crowd were held, faces reflecting their worry. It's Emily. His friend blurted out, fear shaking their voice. There was an accident. She, their breath hitched, unable to continue. In that moment, Jake realized his moment of connection with his father was slipping away, threatened by the urgency of reality crashing into his carefully laid plans. Accident? What do you mean? Just come now. Please. The friend turned on their heel, rushing back the way they came. Without thinking, Jake shot a glance back to his father. He found Roger's eyes, wide with a mix of confusion and concern, but he noted something burning there, an unspoken understanding that Jake needed to act. I'll be right back, Jake assured him, though he felt uncertainty claw at his insides. As he rushed down the hall, everything around him blurred. Faces morphed into fleeting silhouettes, sounds echoed into a chaotic pit of noise. Each thud of his footsteps seemed a desperate plea, calling for the safety of the one person, Emily, who had always been his anchor in a storm. When he burst into the sidewalk, a growing crowd gathered, their faces grim as whispers filled the air like a dark mist. In the center, he spotted Emily, lying on the pavement. His breath caught. She was hurt, and the sight stabbed through him like a shard of ice. He pushed through the crowd, his heart racing, ignoring the tightenings in his gut. Emily! He shouted, franticness swimming in his tone. He knelt beside her. Her face was pale, a stark contrast to the vibrant warmth she radiated in life. The world faded away, and in this moment, all that mattered was her. Stay with me. Please, just hang on. Jake, she whispered, her voice faint, almost lost in the noise. She blinked slowly, fighting to maintain consciousness. I'm okay, just tired. No, you're not okay. You need help. Tears blurred Jake's vision a bit, threatening to spill over as reality snarled around him. In the distance, he saw sirens flashing, red and blue lighting up the darkness. Paramedics rushed in, their voices serious yet calm, like a lifeline. As they approached, Jake reluctantly allowed them to take charge, but fear gripped him painfully. Jake, Emily began, but the words fell away, drowned by the chaos. I'm right here. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly, unwilling to let go. You're going to be fine. Just stay with me. The paramedics worked quickly, their movements deliberate. Yet in the frenzy of life and death, Jake felt the weight of his earlier conversation with his father looming like a ghost. The room of hearts searching for connection now felt impossibly distant. He looked at Emily's fading smile, the hope flickering in her gaze. Jake, I'm scared, she managed, and those words struck home. I know, but we'll get through this. You're stronger than you think. Remember how far you've come? The words spilled from his mouth, an instinctual plea to keep her anchored. Suddenly, the whisper of his thoughts crashed into clarity. If love could advocate strength, then so could it salvage relationships, including the one with his father. But would his father still be there to support him when the storm passed, or would it pay the ultimate price? As the medics loaded Emily into the ambulance, Jake's heart raced at the thought of the shifting ground beneath his feet, balancing family ties on the precipice of change as he grappled with an inevitable choice ahead. An unexpected voice cut through his thoughts. "Jake!" It was Roger, striding forward, desperation marking his features. What happened? Time hung heavy as he met his father's gaze, uncertain what or who would emerge from this wreckage they could never have anticipated. "Emily's hurt, and..." He started, but the words died in his throat. The crowd closed tighter around them, pressing against their shared fears, holding a future that just felt too fragile. Would they have to face each other unguarded now, even with everything hanging in the balance? Jake's heartbeat surged again, pounding in his ears. Would this moment be the key to broke walls, or just another setback? Jake glanced into his father's eyes, searching for some form of assurance, a flicker of understanding that what they were about to confront was monumental. But all he saw was fear mirrored back at him, an emotion they both shared. The chaos continued to swirl around them, but Jake's world had narrowed down to just two people, him and his father. "Let us get to the hospital," Roger finally said, urgency in his tone pulling Jake out of his spiraling thoughts. He instinctively started moving, heart racing, dragging his father along with him as they hurried toward the waiting ambulance. The sirens wailed, a haunting reminder of how quickly life could change. Each step felt heavy, the weight of the moment bearing down on them like a storm cloud. Jake squeezed his eyelids shut for a brief second, conjuring every ounce of courage he could muster. Emily was his best friend, the one person who knew him without judgment, who had always believed in his dreams. The thought of losing her felt like a crack forming in his foundation. "Do you think she'll be okay?" Roger asked, breaking the silence that hung like a fog. Jake swallowed hard, uncertain how to answer. "She has to be. She has to be." The mantra echoed in his head, fueled by a desperate hope. Finding comfort in that hope was becoming harder, but they needed to keep moving. Reaching the ambulance, they found chaos once more. The medics, faces set in concentrated determination, worked to stabilize Emily. Jake stood off to the side, the world slipping further from his grasp as he watched them do their job. He felt like a ghost observing the reality he couldn't participate in, yet paralyzed by helplessness. "Jake, come here," one of the medics called, snapping him out of his daze. He approached cautiously, heart in his throat. "She's stable," the medic reassured him, but Jake's heart felt heavy still. The calmness in her voice felt like it didn't match the panic swirling in his chest. "We're taking her to St. Mary's. You can follow us." As he nodded, he glanced back at Roger, who had only just caught up, panting slightly. "We can't lose her," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper, but laced with pleading desperation. Roger stood close, an unusual gravity settling between them. "We won't lose her, Jake. We have to stay hopeful. We need to be there for her." In that moment, something shifted. It was as if they were no longer separate people caught in their fears but instead part of a shared commitment to protect Emily. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and in seconds, they were pulling away, leaving Jake and his father behind, their faces illuminated in the red and blue of the emergency lights. They jumped into Roger's car and sped off after it, silence enveloping them, except for the roar of the engine and the fading sirens ahead, a reminder of the fight happening for Emily. With every twist and turn, anxiety twisted in Jake's gut, but alongside it was something else, a kind of reckoning. While Emily lay fighting for her life, Jake finally felt the burden of his relationship with Roger pressing at the forefront of his mind. "What are we going to do when we get there?" Jake asked, uncertainty stitched into each word. "We'll be there for her," Roger replied flatly. But Jake sensed an unspoken burden in those words. They both understood that being there wouldn't just be about Emily. It was about confronting their own fears, rebuilding what had cracked beneath the weight of unspoken truths. As Roger pushed the pedal further, Jake realized that this fragile moment was more than just about Emily's accident. It was a chance for him and his father to face those fears, the cracks in their relationship, and possibly mend them. But would it be enough? In the distance, through the rush of wind, something inside him echoed louder: the storm had just begun, and its aftermath would reshape their lives forever. Jake clenched his fists, heart pounding as he uttered to himself, "I can't lose them both." Would this pivotal moment lead them to repair their bond, or further fracture it? The hospital loomed ahead like a fortress, its sterile lights piercing through the fading evening. As they rushed through the automatic doors, Jake's heart hammered against his chest, each beat a desperate prayer for Emily. He could feel Roger's presence beside him, a mix of tension and determination emanating from his father. They made their way to the reception desk, urgency coating their every word. "Emily Taylor. Where is she?" Jake demanded, anxiety drawing sharp lines on his forehead. The receptionist's eyes were steady and calming, but her words felt like knives. "She's in surgery. I need you to wait here." They paced the waiting room, the sterile smells and fluorescent lights creating an atmosphere thick with dread. Jake refused to sit, running his fingers through his hair, trying to calm the storm raging inside. What if he began, but the words fell away as panic crept in. Roger's voice cut through the haze. "Jake, listen to me. We need to be strong. Emily's a fighter." His father placed a firm hand on Jake's shoulder, and for the first time that night, Jake felt the slightest flicker of connection, a pulse of shared fear and strength. The minutes felt like hours, time dilating while they waited. Faces flickered by, some familiar, some strangers, all wearing emotions that mirrored their own: fear, hope, despair. Finally, a surgeon in scrubs entered the waiting area, his expression grave. "Jake Thompson?" he called, and the world fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "Is she okay?" Jake rushed forward, desperation clawing at his throat. The surgeon nodded slightly, but his gaze was serious. "She's stable, but it was a significant injury. She's in recovery now, and will know more soon." Relief flooded through Jake, making his legs tremble. For a moment, hope bloomed bright and unsteady, the burden lifting just enough for them to breathe. But then he realized Roger had gone, still beside him, a shadow crossing his features. Thank you," Jake stammered, not quite registering the surgeon's words. He caught sight of his father's face, the worry etched deep, and suddenly, Jake remembered why they were both there. They were connected, drawn into this storm together. "Dad," he turned to Roger, and his voice softened. "We need to be here for her and for each other. We can't let this moment slip away." Roger met his son's gaze, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You're right," he said, and Jake could see a change, a moment where the layers of family history fell away, revealing the man underneath. As they waited for news, the tension shifted from fear to unity. They shared stories of Emily, laughter mixed with tears, reminiscing about the times she had been their anchor, the friend who never faltered. With every word, they slowly began to rebuild the fragile bridge between them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the surgeon returned. "You can see her now. She's still groggy, but she's awake." With a rush of gratitude, Jake moved ahead, Roger beside him. They entered the recovery room, a bright space that seemed surreal after the whirlwind of the night. Emily lay on the bed, her face pale but filled with relief upon seeing them. "Hey, Chica," Jake said, a smile breaking through his earlier worry. "You gave us quite the scare." "Yeah," Emily whispered, her voice hoarse but brightening when she spotted Roger. "I'm glad you're here." Roger stepped forward, his vulnerability surfacing. "You scared us, Emily. We need you in our lives. You're important to us." A smile broke on Emily's lips, softening the worry in the room. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Jake felt an overwhelming wave of love wash over him, the moment binding them together. Everything that had been said, every unspoken truth, hung in the air like a powerful promise. They realized that family extended beyond blood, encompassing every heart that bound them together through love and understanding. As they sat with her, holding hands, Jake turned to his father. "This is what it's about, Dad. Being there for each other. Only we can define our family." Together, they began to chart a new path, one not defined by expectations but by the warmth of connection and choice. The storm had not only tested them, it had transformed them. Understanding blossomed, ready to be nurtured in the fertile soil of love and respect. In that hospital room, they stood together as one, united by their trials, ready to face the future whatever it held. And with that shared gaze, a new beginning took root. If this is the moment of transformation that touched your heart, don't wait, subscribe immediately to the channel. You need to see more exclusive stories that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every single click helps us grow together. Comment below. Tell us your reactions, your feelings about this ending. Let us connect. And this is your chance to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share the love. True fans know the value of spreading inspiration far and wide.